Hello and welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. Today we are talking about coloring, and I feel like I've talked about coloring a few times before on the podcast, but I love it so much that I wanted to have an entire podcast episode just dedicated to the fantastic world of coloring. As I was getting ready to record this, I did a little research and found that there are several studies happening and that have happened all about coloring with different ages, elementary school age kids, high school kids, college kids, young adults. People are interested in seeing how coloring impacts people. They're wondering if coloring has an impact on anxiety, if coloring can reduce depression, if coloring can reduce stress. And preliminary results of these studies seem to suggest that it could help with anxiety and depression and starting a mindfulness practice. Now, these studies are really small and limited, but it's interesting to see that people are starting to really delve deep and do some studies around how people are reacting to coloring. Coloring is a great distraction skill. It's one of my favorites to use with kids because, as I've said before, play is a natural stress reliever for kids. So if a kid loves coloring, it can be a way that can help them relax and reduce their stress, just naturally. And so it's one of my favorites to suggest for kids to do early on when we're working together, or just if they're having a hard time, to be able to just pull out a coloring sheet and have kids color is phenomenal. It can be something that can help ground them and settle them if they're having a hard time. I honestly start a lot of my therapy sessions with my clients with coloring because it's just like when you're playing a game, it gives you another thing to do while you're talking about maybe some challenging things, or just talking about what happened in the last 2 weeks since I've seen you, what's going on, what challenges have there been. It just gives you something else to focus on and makes it a little bit easier for kids to enter that dialogue with you, because that one-to-one eye contact face-to-face is really intense for kids. So to have something else to do, to have something to have your attention but still be able to have conversations really makes a lot of sense. So I often start off sessions using coloring. It's soothing, it's relaxing, and it's always interesting to see how kids react. Sometimes I do coloring sheets, sometimes I do just doodling, sometimes I ask them to draw their calm spot, sometimes I ask them to draw their favorite place. You know, it can be a great way to go through some different strategies, try some different things out to see if that helps them relax. The other thing I really love about coloring is that it can be for all ages. So the great thing about this surge in adult coloring books is that it allows for people to use the coloring books and to play. Nobody will look at you funny anymore if you are coloring in a coloring book. These days, everybody has seen adult coloring books, knows they exist, and wouldn't be weirded out if you saw an adult coloring. And there are lots of adult coloring books out there. So there's ones that have inspirational quotes. There's ones that are, pictures of food for foodies. There's ones that are, you can get really super simple, or if you're really wanting to have something that's very intricate, you can do that as well. Also, if you have more of a snarky or inappropriate humor, there's a whole line of inappropriate, snarky coloring books that are available as well. So you can just search on Amazon and see some really funny coloring books that are over there. Recently, we just added coloring sheets to the Coping Skills for Kids store. So we turned all of our card decks into coloring sheets. So you can go on over and check those out. It's a great way to start therapy. It's a great tool that you can use when you're working with kids, is to use coloring sheets. So we made those available. And in the show notes, I'll link up to those, and I'll link up to some of the coloring books that made me laugh and looked really interesting and looked really fun. If you like this podcast, feel free to subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. Oh, and one last thing, I want you to make sure that you take a little bit of time and have a little bit of fun, maybe do some coloring of your own, and have an awesome day.